So, welcome everyone. This is a joint presentation between Jen Colt and myself. Jen was really the mastermind of this session. I happen to be the person who could be physically present. So we're going to try to do this in a tag team kind of way. I seem to be unable to, I might possibly occasionally be able to check whether there are chat questions, but I think reality is that Jen will have to interrupt when there are chat questions that come in. I will also just mention that there is a kind of technical limitation in that the room does not have a microphone. So we'll be operating through the microphone in my laptop. That means that I will try to repeat questions when they come in from the audience. And if I fail to do so, please remind me.
Hey, Todd, how many people are there in the room?
Oh, it's this, about 30 people, 40 people?
If people are willing to just walk up to the laptop, that worked pretty well in an earlier session I was in, a lot better. I think maybe that would save you some repeating.
Okay, so let me ask, can people in the room hear the laptop speaker? No. Okay. Okay, so that's about as far up as this laptop goes. So I will also have to repeat. I'll have to repeat in both directions. Yes. So, we have a few constraints, but this is intended to be exercise, a session where we give people something of an exercise for part of the session.
I think you can set the audio to go through HDMI.
Oh, can we? All right. We'll just see if we can address the audio question quickly.
The HDMI output. The speaker down below, and access there.
All right. Would someone from the audience, from the remote audience, please speak again?
Hello.
Wow. Okay. We are now using the room speakers, so one of the sets of restating will not have to happen. Splendid.
Okay, I just put out a message on WOLFcon's on the WOLFcon Slack, so I can probably take that away. People can hear now.
Yes. Yeah. All right. Thank you. So this is an update on the tri-council application. So the tri-council application, the three councils set up an application formalization working group. And this is a bit of an update on what's been going on and a bit of an activity for the group. So just we'll just put up the membership of the councils of this tri-council group briefly. We have representations from three councils and also a couple representatives from people who will be dealing with hosting. So to get kind of broad perspective. So what's this group been doing? Well, the Eureka platform and application. Well, the Eureka platform itself was presented at last WOLFcon. The idea of application formalization really was presented from two different directions in Hamburg. Became more real last year with some proposals that came out of the Eureka team. And then there's been some question in the community, what should application formalization really look like? How should these modules be aggregated into applications? So there's been a lot of discussion about that and about how this particular development of Eureka comes into the community. What's it look like? And there's an initial proof of concept. There was initial proof of concept breakdown that Vincent presented in spreadsheet form just to explore whether this concept could work on paper. There's a very practical aggregation of modules into what's being called mega apps, just as a practical deployment. Here's how the technical dependencies really work. But the question that's left to the community is, how do we want the applications to look in the long run? So that's part of what this group's been working on. It's also been talking amongst ourselves, looking at the different the breakdown in spreadsheets. Been looking for feedback from sysops. There's some intersection with the TC's RFC processes. This particular working group's been doing a lot of discussion coordination and trying to come to some recommendations. That's where this group's going to come in. So just this is kind of ironic coming after Vince, the session right after Vince's overview of Eureka. But in a nutshell, there are a number of architectural changes that are included in Eureka. This is going to be the version, the deployment infrastructure that the Library of Congress is going to go live on. This includes changes to like the authentication authorization framework, routing between modules, and some other things, but the part that we're talking about in this session in this working group is application formalization. And this also gives us as the bullet point says, this is also the beginnings of being able to think about disentangling some of the current dependencies, figure out how we can come to a place of more flexibility and more replaceability. So just a couple functioning definitions, because even the word application seems to generate confusion. So for today, we're going to try to use the word app when we talk about the little menu icons at the top of the bar in Folio. The thing that you click on to do check-in or check-out or to open up inventory. That's what we're going to mean by app. For application, what we mean is a set of modules that are bundled together as a deployable aggregate in order to provide some specific functionality. So oftentimes this will be a front-end module, back-end module, and some kind of storage. That's going to be our operating definition for today. I see some looks of confusion, but
I'm just going to wait and see what you say.
okay. Well, the disclaimer at the bottom is very important. We know this isn't an elegant or clear use of language, but we hope that it's good enough for today. It's all we care about is the scope for this is having the conversation today. So as you can see, there are a whole bunch of other sessions this WOLFcon on application formalization and Eureka. I would highly recommend them if you want to do a little deeper. Also, so this session, we're going to try to come at application formalization from a functional perspective. Like how would people consuming a Folio as users want to see functionality bundled together? There will be another session that looks at more at it from the perspective, I believe, of dependency management. So hopefully having a couple workshops that approach applications from these two different perspectives, we can see where that intersects and where that, how does this help us look towards a kind of ideal future state? And we have some links to related information. So if you want to find out more about like what the meeting notes from the Tri-Council Working Group and any documents we've produced, And the things that the Eureka team has also produced, there are links in the presentation and these slides will be shared. So we have an activity and Jen, would you like me to go to this activity? Would you like to explain what we're doing next?
Sure. So I think the best thing for you to do is to just leave this slide up until
Okay.
folks have time to type it in. Because they don't really, yeah. So if we can like give folks a minute to get there, and then maybe if folks in the room can kind of nod once they're there or give us the go ahead.
It's on Shed as well.
Yes. Yeah. And the slides are also on how, I don't know how to say it, on the schedule. Yeah.
So
Maybe
the thing, so while you guys are, just to give you guys a little idea, the idea is an activity for everyone in the room and at home to be able to pull components, composable components of Folio together to build these, like your view of what Folio applications would look like. And this could be done, this could be done here live with everyone. We'll allow some time for that. This can also be done. I think Jen wants to leave this up for a few days, so that people could also do this from home.
Yeah, I'll leave it open for all of WOLFcon and into next week. I guess we might also, as people are kind of getting to this, if anybody had questions about anything in the slides, we could talk about that too before we get started.
So let me first ask, are there questions about any of the slides? Not seeing any raised hands, then I think, have people been able to come to the activity page? Very good.
There are too many modules.
All
Yeah.
right.
Yeah. So, I had to make all those little cards, so I agree with you. So if you've gotten, so there's a little welcome message to read that kind of sets a little bit of context, and then there's just a question about when you're doing this activity. So this is the Tri-Council Working Group update session, if you're trying to answer that. Tomorrow, the app interaction group is also going to be looking at this activity as like a group together. So we're kind of looking at it, hopefully, kind of from the perspective of our own institutions or our own customers if we're hosting. When they look at it tomorrow, they're going to try to look at it from sort of a more holistic view from their perspective, having the experience of trying to get apps to interact with each other, as is the name of their SIG. So there'll be another discussion about this. But for today, we're just kind of we're being self-centered. This is for you and your institution, or to whatever extent you understand the needs of your institution. And so the cards on the left, they don't even, Jeremy, I think it was Jeremy, said we have a lot of modules, but those aren't even modules. Those are apps, or at least many of them are sort of at the app level. So if you just pick one of those and then hit continue, you'll get on to the next screen. So these are not the smallest bit of Folio. But so our goal here is for you to kind of imagine this future state of Folio where where things have been broken up a bit. We don't just have an inventory application that has had tons and tons of things added to it. And when you install inventory, you must also install all those tons and tons of things. We're imagining a world where things can be divided up a bit more easily. And what we kind of want to understand is, of this functionality, what would you bring in to your ideal folio? Are the pieces small enough for you to get just what you want? And are you able to get what you want without getting what you don't want, but also able to kind of get it in sort of like an organization that makes sense to you? So the categories here are kind of business areas. So think of them as like the kind of work that's happening at your library. And so you can organize the applications under the type of work that they relate to. So the business areas are a bit abstract. They're not like a real thing in Folio. Like they're not an app, they're not a module, they're not an application. They're just kind of a categorization of the kinds of work that you do. Yeah, so that's the activity, to try pulling some of these over and building your own folio. One of the things that we're interested in as you undertake this is just kind of hearing your thoughts and whether you're able to do this, or whether there are places where you're like, well, this is my only choice and I wish I had a different choice. That's especially the kind of stuff that we're interested in. There's also a little set of questions after you hit the yellow finished button that will sort of ask you how well this worked for you, and then also kind of give you a chance to give us any feedback that you'd like to about application formalization, and even Eureka as a whole. This is sort of RTAC is the real-time availability. So some of the cards have a little eye, and if you mouse over that, it will tell you a little description. For the ones that I thought people might have questions about, I tried to write a little something. But yeah, RTAC is to provide availability to discovery layers. Yeah. So Todd, yeah, you can keep sharing, or you can stop sharing if you want to not, if there's not that many people online, so I don't know that there's a lot to look at if you stop sharing. Um, yeah, I think that's it. Does anybody else from the group want to add anything? Or questions or?
Mike Taylor has a question, I believe.
I would like to understand the difference between workflows module and workflows.
The question is, I would like to understand the difference between workflow modules and workflows.
That sounds like I made a mistake. It sounds like I accidentally made two cards for the same thing.
Okay.
But because I gave them two different names, it didn't yell at me about it.
So we were going to give people about 15 to 20 minutes to go ahead and do this exercise, sort of build your preferred folio. Not to, no need to overthink it, but we're trying to get a sense of how are people thinking about how they want functionality to be bundled. And if there are questions, I'm happy to field more.
There is, I presume, no way to sort of split one of the elements on the left into more than one category.
There's a question about whether you can split the elements on the left into more than one category.
You can't. What you can do is make a new category. So if you drag it into the blank part of the screen, you can make a whole new category and then try to come up with a name for it, or leave the name blank.
I think the question was about the elements on the left.
Yes, but that's what I'm saying. You can't. So if you're unable to choose, like you've got, so let's pick an obvious one. So you have notes, right? And you're like, well, I want to put notes everywhere. So then just bring notes into the middle of the screen. It'll make a new category, and you can just put anything in that category that you think is part of multiple areas. Does that make sense?
Yes,
And then I would say if there's something where you think that the piece on the left is not fine enough, you think that it's really two pieces, I think leaving us a comment saying this, we really think of this as two pieces, that would be very helpful.
This is the hardest WOLFcon session I have ever been.
Jeremy just said that this is the hardest WOLFcon session he's ever been in.
Sorry. And it's also the last one of the day. I was telling Todd earlier that I kind of feel bad for, it's a lot of thinking when you're jet lagged and it's the end of the day.
I'm also a bit scared I'm just gonna get things wrong and everyone's gonna laugh at me for thinking be faster circulation. Yeah.
There was just the comment of someone being afraid of getting things wrong and everyone laughing at them.
Well, it's anonymous, so we'd have to really track you down. Yeah, I think you're okay.
Well, I think one of the things that we're hoping to see is whether there are like strong alignments in how people break things out, or if there's some real divergencing. There's some real diverging in how people think about breaking this up.
Interesting seeing how many areas of polio there are that I didn't even know existed after being as deeply involved as I have been all this time.
We just had a comment about how it's interesting that there are so many areas of folio that that Mike was unaware of even after having been involved so deeply in folio for so long. It does highlight the complexity of this venture. I can't tell you how many times I've been in a room where someone has said, "Oh, library management system, that's just inventory control, no problem." It's like, no, it's much more than that.
Yeah, it really highlights the like sort of future appeal of the application formalization. Like, I know that whole like app library future that people kind of dream about. You can see why you'd want it because there's so much stuff in here that maybe you don't need or care about, but other people do. And having that be like an actual accomplishable thing would be amazing.
And for the people who are remote, I'll just say that we have a room full of people intently going through the exercises, often on a phone. So an extra challenge.
I like my dual monitor setup. That's why I chose not to come to WOLFcon, so I could have this. If we decide we don't like one of the categories, do we just leave it blank on one of the basic ones that you gave, Jen?
Yeah, I don't think you can get rid of them, but if you just leave it empty, that's good.
Okay.
What part of libraries does Kristen think we don't need? That's my question.
No, it's more like one part felt too big. And so I
Oh,
not breaking it up. I had nothing that sort of was like generic enough to leave in there.
yeah, that makes sense.
Remote storage and that's up to the same thing.
Well, so the question was, aren't remote storage and Kaisoft the same thing? Well, remote storage is a module that provides some basic common functionality. Kaisoft specifically provides connectivity to the Kaisoft system. The Matic specifically provides connectivity to the Matic, one of the Matic systems. So you're pointing at a particularly interesting question of how do you organize.
Is there a limit how many we can have?
I do not believe that there is a limit to how many applications.
It's not like, oh, there, no, wait, it didn't like me, guys.
All right. That is impressive.
All right, so we can give it about another, I think, another 5 minutes in this session. If people are starting to look like they're getting kind of close.
I think I'm just thinking more in the suit of science. Yeah.
My hope, although I have not fully confirmed this, is that if you like leave your browser window open, it'll let you keep going later. I'm not sure if you get interrupted and like submit one halfway done and then submit a second one, that's fine too.
Well, we're not looking for perfect solutions. We're trying to get a sense of how people think about how functionality is associated. And there is no grading.
I don't know if it's useful to talk at this point while people trying to finish up.
Well, we can leave a little, we'll call the exercise to a close in about 3 to 4 minutes. Then we'll have a little time where we can discuss, and there's a few questions. I think Jen had a few questions queued up.
I do. There's questions that are like written in here, but we can actually just talk about them for this group. I tried to set this up so it would work for people who were here and people who might do it on their own time later.
So just about 2 more minutes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so if you think if you're done or close to done, please go ahead and mark it finished so that your stuff is saved. You can also, and if you feel like you've got a lot more that you'd like to do, you can the link will be open for about a week, so you can come back and do it. Try the exercise again. Thank you all for being willing to engage with this. The last session of the first day of the conference, when probably half of us are quite jet lagged, And then so this would be a good time for, Jen had some questions queued up and for any kind of discussion.
Yeah, the questions were mostly about sort of your impression about whether there were pieces that seemed too big or too small, and kind of whether you were able to include and exclude just the things that you wanted. And then just kind of if you have any sort of general thoughts about this sort of idea of application formalization or questions. So, this isn't a technical session, so this might be the most product oriented discussion about this change. So kind of any of your thoughts or concerns about it.
Jeremy,
This might pertain, I think, to what she asked, though I'm not sure if it means something's too small or too large. But there seemed to me to be a lot of overlap and implied functionality between many of the things I saw listed out. So, yeah, so just, that was something that made it difficult.
okay, so the comment was that there seemed to be a lot of overlap between many of the things that were broken out on the left, I believe.
Yeah.
Which, what it means for things being too large or too small. Well, that sort of probably says something about things being too large or too small, and also making it difficult to bring the pieces together in a way that you liked. If you have specifics on that, please put them in the forums, because then in the comments, because that would really help us with how to think. Mike.
So there were a lot of modules I thought that, or obviously the maps or applications. Anyway, things in the left-hand column that by design don't fit into any of those boxes. So things like workflows, lists, notes, they're there to work across the whole of code. So I first thing I did pretty much was make a cross-cutting box. I've done a lot of things to that. I guess a lot of other people.
Yeah, so the comment was there were a lot of things that in the left-hand side that didn't fit in the predetermined apps. And so there was especially things that were wanting to work across applications like notes and such. And so I think you said you created a box for cross-application stuff, right? So yeah, I think that part of what we were trying to figure out is like, what are the new applications people would be creating out of these parts? So maybe we should have been more clear about that ability to create new cards on the right, as many or as granular as you want. Scott.
Yeah, I actually, I heard a lot of those as something called system management, but it was called system management. There were settings, there was.
Okay.
Just workflows, anything like that.
Okay, Scott mentioned that he dealt with part of that by creating a application called system settings that pulls together a certain number of those things that seem to be working across the system.
Chat.
Oh, there's a chat message, and then I'll get to Wayne. There we go.
I just said I
yeah.
did the same thing as Scott.
All right. Wayne.
So as a hosting provider who has, a number of customers, one of the things that's sort of interesting to me is how, I think the instinct of users in the room is to say, well, all these things are part of some kind of cross-cutting thing or cross-application thing. Whereas as a hosting provider who wants to provide maximum flexibility, I would say, well, maybe each of these things is its own thing, because maybe I don't want You know, like I would never bundle, notes of organizations together, even though they both cut a product. Sort of, larger, functional concerns.
Right, so the comment was, the sense that like maybe most of the people in the room would, well, actually, I'm trying to recapitulate that, and I'm afraid my jet lag is catching up to me.
I can try and restate it. I mean, basically what I'm saying is that there's an element of composability. When you are trying to provide service as a service provider, where you want the maximum flexibility to be able to meet the needs of your users. That is different from the perspective of a library, where a library might say, you know, I put all these things together because to me, I can't imagine orders without organizations or whatever the case may be. And so it may as well all go in one box. Whereas as a hosting provider, I would say, well, but orders and agreements both use organizations. And so therefore organizations is something different than orders and, than ERM and acquisitions, for example.
Right. Could people online hear that well enough?
Yeah. So I guess one thing I was gonna say about that is that the boxes, the business areas are more like prompts to help you think about what applications you need, and they're not meant to represent the way those applications are actually bundled together. So so the fact that you might think of, oh, we need all these things that sort of are the base of the system, like reporting and notes and tags, that doesn't mean that you're saying those things should be combined into one application. It just means that those things are what you think about as sort of the baseline or something that, or a cross app or whatever. Like the things on the left really are individual bits, and the boxes on the right are more of like a prompt for just kind of thinking about what you need and kind of categorizing them. But those categories on the right aren't really represented in Folio or application formalization. But one thing I was wondering, so like you brought up organizations. So organizations we might think of as an application. Within organizations right now, you have some organizations that are vendors and some that aren't. And so one of the questions for application formalization might be, does all the functionality that's currently in organizations belong there? Or should something like functionality around for vendors be separate? Like, should there be a vendors organizations app and a separate like donors organizations app? That kind of thing. So a little bit it's we look at the way Folio is now and see kind of the outline of how things might be broken up. But is that outline kind of really what people need? Yeah. So I guess that's all I want to say is like think of the things on the right more as like useful buckets to like make yourself think about what you need, and the things on the left as the applications themselves. They're not necessarily going to be forced together because they are of a similar business area.
Maybe another way to look at this, I think we talked about this as in an earlier iteration or an earlier discussion, was thinking about the placards on the right as in our hypothetical future application store. This is a unit that we would want to click on for deploying. So I what's that?
That horrifies me. I think they're way too big and broad.
And so to trim the applications to like the scale that you would want to deploy.
So you guys imagined us adding a lot.
Actually, we did.
Yeah.
We did, and I think that if there was an obstacle to that, that was a failure in our presentation.
So I did
Sure.
add a lot, but the more I think, the more I want to go back and add about, like, I might actually have very few categories that have more than one or two. If I really take time to think through, because I feel like, oh, wait, I put items in one place, items should look completely separately. Items are their own thing.
And I think it,
Separate from holdings and instances.
Well, because that's one way in which items function is as part of sort of, cataloging inventory, but items are much more useful to someone doing circulation or SAPS management than they are to somebody who's cataloging.
Right. Well, would you?
so,
There's a slice of items that is circulation, there's a slice of items that
Yes,
is
yeah.
cataloging.
Yeah.
So if you're cataloging items, you use 7 metadata points. When you're charging an item to a page,
Items
there's
to enable these other, like a cataloger, as a cataloger, I don't care about the item. I only create it to enable these other functions.
right, but it's what I'm saying is there's different slices of functionality
Yes.
that you are enabling, so.
Right.
You in circulation or you.
Yeah.
A piece is gonna add all this stuff.
Yeah.
And here you're gonna use it for circulation, here you're gonna use it for acquisitions, here you're gonna use it for metadata management.
Yeah.
And that's the challenge of creating where does items belong? It belongs everywhere now.
Yes.
so I kind of think that if you or anyone else would like to go back to the link and like do it again with that idea of really what level would I want to sort of mix and match things out? I think that would be really interesting information. We've got a hand up from Jeremy and then a hand up from Ian.
Just a quick comment that, I know I talked a lot of trash, but, I really appreciated this exercise and it's forcing me to think about things that I might have tried to avoid thinking about otherwise, and I do appreciate that.
Excellent. Ian,
Let's see if I can make my voice carry. What I'm hearing is a difference between data objects, we have items, we have organizations, we have these kinds and shapes of records that may be useful in different contexts. But then we also have things that are far more functional, like integrating with a particular remote storage system. And so I guess kind of some way of teasing apart, these are the data structures that matter. And then these are the functions that we may want to do with those data structures in these particular contexts. And then I guess over top of that is workflows, which is awesome. And we'll make everything great.
Set for tomorrow.
okay, great, thank you for that. Let's check the time here. So I think we are about towards the end. It looks like there are a lot of tired people in the room. Any final questions or comments?
I just want to throw out, oh, sorry. I was just,
Maura first.
Quiet. You go ahead, Christy.
all I was gonna say was that, we have a lot of dependencies in Folio, and like folks that are part of app interaction or folks who have tried to deal with data sync issues know all of those problems. So don't feel bad that they are also surfacing when you try to do this activity.
All right, and Maura, your comment?
I was just gonna go ahead and reiterate or give a +1 to Jeremy's comment that this particular exercise is really helpful in visualizing in. It always feels like I'm in the weeds whenever I'm dealing with Folio and sort of getting this sense of, just a higher up view. This really helps for that. So.
Great. Well, thank you all for your engagement and for joining us today. And have a good little break before the reception this evening, and have an enjoyable rest of the conference.